My partner left me when my daughter was 7 months old, and she basically said that she didn't feel like the relationship was working, and that, you know, two happy parents by themselves were better than two unhappy parents together. And yeah, it was pretty tough. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life, actually, and it was very difficult for me because we'd moved from, I currently live in Bondi, but we'd moved to Manly to be closer to her family. So I was in this 2-bedroom apartment on East Hill in Manly, and you know, Manly's kind of like the other end of the world. You know, she took our car as well, and so there was this kind of period just after she'd left where I was completely isolated. It was like a ferry trip, then a train trip, then a bus trip to get back to Bondi, and yeah, there was some pretty dark times in that sort of first few weeks. It was very difficult, and it made me realise that there's you know, there's very few people in your life who you can have the conversations that you need to have in those times with, and you know, especially when you're thinking, you know, the darkest of dark thoughts, it can be very difficult to admit that to people, that you're thinking in that way, and it's kind of this sort of whole cycle of shame and guilt and pain and distaste and disgust for your own, you know, weakness, and you don't know who to talk to about it because you don't know who you feel comfortable admitting that to. And I was very fortunate in that there was one person in my life who just said the right things to me, and you know, he. The thing that I remember most is this conversation I had with this friend of mine, you know, at about 11 o'clock at night, and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything, and he just said to me, make her right, just try and make her right, and by that he meant just force yourself into her shoes, force yourself to see it all from her perspective. Make her right, no matter how difficult it is, make her right. And it was a very educational process for me because I was 40 years old, my partner was 25, 26, you know, so she was much younger than me, and I started to backtrack through all the things that had happened and all the things that were happening. And I looked at it from the perspective of this, you know, 26-year-old woman who's got a 7-month-old kid, who's walked out on a relationship, who doesn't have any financial security, who's living with a mum. You know, it was the last place on earth that she wanted to be, I'm sure. And it really, it didn't make my journey any easier, but it made it easier for me to empathise with my ex. And I think that was a really important step for me, being able to see things through her eyes. And yeah, it did me a lot of good. A lot of good. It hasn't, you know, it's not like there was this sort of epiphany and I went, oh, okay, well, happy days, you know. Fast forward 4 years and here I am. It's been, you know, up and down, and it's been a struggle since then. But that single piece of advice made me avoid a lot of common mistakes I think that men make in these situations. And number one was that I never crossed this line, and I think most blokes know where that line is, and a lot of guys unfortunately don't. But I was never violent. I was never intimidating towards my partner, and I never said things that you can't take back. I said, you know, we both said a lot of things that we probably regret and that we don't, that we wish that we hadn't have, but we never said anything that you can't come back from. And I say that to guys now. I say, if you take the high road now, it's going to make your life so much easier in the future, because there are just some things that can't be repaired. And obviously, you know, there were things that had happened in our relationship that had degraded it. But during that breakup, we both managed to keep it at a level of civility that's now made things a lot easier. You know, you know, my partner's not sitting at home when I'm with my daughter thinking he's going to do something stupid or crazy. I didn't lose it. And I think that's really important for guys in this position. You know, lose it, you do lose it. You know, I lost it plenty of times, but I never lost it in front of her, in front of my ex, or in front of my daughter. And that was important because she trusts me, and rightly so, because I love my daughter. I love her more than anything, would do anything for her. And I think that really hits a lot of guys hard sometimes when the mother assumes that there's some, you know, that you don't love your child, or because you've displayed irrational behaviour in front of them. And again, if you look at it from make her right, if you think of it through her eyes, she's seen this irrational person, and, you know, she has every right to suspect that irrationality may bleed into your time when she's not around. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, is just never cross that line.